Josh Middleton of Sylosis. How you doing?
Yeah, very good, thanks. The solo in Deadwood is like the hardest thing I've ever written.
Feels like there's a slight tinge of conclusion of an age.
I think that's a fair observation to make. I think there's some definite elements of that.
Did your time in Architects ultimately influence things, what you're doing now, maybe giving you the confidence to take some risks maybe that you might not have done?
There is definitely some stuff that I've taken from Architects. The main thing is like being able to like work and collaborate better.
Would you like to collaborate with some different artists? You're thinking, oh, maybe that could be cool. We'll get Joe Duplantier on the next record.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, I'm a big fan of his. He's been a big influence on me since I started doing vocals, actually. The elitism was way more intense than it is these days. Metal is a bit more accepting. It feels good to see that song's like a huge talking point, and I keep getting the most comments about that one, just being like, oh, Absint's the best song on the record.
Primordial Radio.
Welcome back to Primordial Radio. My name is Pete Bailey. Today, delighted to be joined by Josh. Would you mind if I said an old friend?
Go for it, of course.
Absolutely,
Pete.
an old friend, Josh Middleton of Sylosis. Dude, how you doing?
Yeah, very good, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, really good, man. Really good. And as we were just getting ready for our conversation today, we were thinking, like, when was the last time we spoke? And in my mind, I was thinking, oh yeah, last time I spoke to Josh, it must have been about a year, 18 months ago. It was all the way back in 2020 during those halcyon days of lockdown.
Yeah.
Oh man.
A while ago, yeah.
Yeah, a while ago. And I kind of feel like you've undoubtedly done all of your COVID interviews and everything like that. But with the benefit of hindsight, how do you look back at it now after it's been so many years?
Yeah, I mean, it was, it was obviously, as everyone always says, difficult for everyone. I mean, looking back, it was, a frustrating amount of time to be on house arrest. Particularly for me, like my daughter just turned 1 in April 2020. So we had like a baby / toddler who was at an age where you couldn't just plonk him in front of the TV, not that we'd want to do that anyway, and just needed like full attention. We couldn't take her anywhere. So that was tricky, but great at the same time, because like, had there not been a pandemic, I would have been away and missed so much of that. And I had a second daughter who came in 2021.
Oh, wow.
When things were still, lockdown-ish.
Yes. Choppy.
So, admittedly, having all that time on phone was, great for me in a lot of ways. And I managed to write 2 Architects records, or maybe like 1.5, because we'd done some writing for for Those That Wish to Exist, and wrote the Sylosis record. So I had a lot of time that I had to write.
Yeah, so you managed to, that's a crazy, 2 kids, couple of Architects records, a Sylosis record. You kept yourself busy, and well, congratulations as well on the birth of your children. That's amazing. How has fatherhood been treating you?
Yeah, good. Yeah. I'm just very grateful for how hard my wife works with them. But it's been great. Amazing.
So we're here today because we are going to be playing and talking all about your brand new album, which is out now via Nuclear Blast Records, A Sign of Things to Come. So this is 3 years on from the last album, and we'll come on to all of the tracks as we go through them. But we'll start out with Deadwood, and I really get the sense that the opening of this track, did you write this first? Because this is one of those tracks where it's like, yep, this always had to be track 1, didn't it?
To be honest, no. I mean, I do normally write with like an opening track in mind, and there was another song written to be the opening track.
Right.
I think it actually got voted off the record. Yeah, it got voted off the record completely. Not by me, but I was happy with the selection, and I know what you mean. It definitely feels like it's one of those sort of opening tracks. Weirdly, I don't remember too much about writing it, even though I'm someone who doesn't drink or anything. So I don't know. There's no reason I shouldn't remember it, but it's just, I think it came together quite quickly, and just really wanted to focus on the hitting hard element.
On the one that didn't make it, I'm quite curious to know, how does a track go from being like front and center, right, this is going to be the first impression of the record, to binned? Like, how does that happen?
Well, it's not going to be binned. So
okay, so you're holding on.
It'll see the light of day. I think it's a great song, and I think most people would agree. I think we're just being really, and as a whole, between the band, management, and Nuclear Blast, like really just trying to come together and settle on the track listing and get a track listing of just 10 songs, which we've never done a short record or a record that fits on like one single vinyl. So we really wanted to just do whatever was best for the record. And some people thought that song might be a bit too much, or just not the best like intro. So yeah, I'm happy to kind of just go with the flow these days, and doesn't mean that the song was bad or won't see the light of day though. So
I feel like we need like a you know how they say, you know, happy wife, happy life. I feel like we need the band version of that saying.
Yeah, for sure.
Let's do this now. This is Sylosis and Deadwood. That is track 2 from the new Sylosis album, which is out now via Nuclear Blast Records. It is the title track from the new album. I'm here with Josh Middleton from the band. It's so good to have you here, dude. And that track, you know, title tracks tend to be quite representative of an album. And there's certainly some more clean vocals in there, which you have sort of done, you know, a little bit here and there over the course of Sylosis Records. One thing I was wondering when it comes to mixing in clean with quite a lot of screaming, is it tricky to do that without then getting the tag of like metalcore?
Yeah. Because like I don't listen to any metalcore, and it's something that back in the day I was like really wanted to make sure we didn't get called. So I mean, if you look at, I mean, there's tons of metal bands that have melodic vocals that aren't metalcore, or back in the early days I was wary, like didn't want to do anything that remotely resembled a breakdown because we didn't want to get called metalcore. But yeah, if we had written like the Domination breakdown, everyone would be like, oh, that's metalcore. But it's like, no, actually we just like Pantera. But I'm at a point where I really don't mind if people call us metalcore. It doesn't bother me at all. And there is some metalcore like out there that I like. I mean, if you think about stuff like Alive or Just Breathing by Killswitch, like that record's insane.
Oh yeah, those albums.
But I guess like metalcore can be such a wide genre. Like Converge.
For me, it's the genre that never died. Like in metal, there's always been quite definitive scenes where they had some pretty big peaks, and then they sort of, you know, thrash is a fairly good example of that. Metalcore just seems to have rebirthed itself every like 3 or 4 years.
But it's a bit of a weird one because what gets called metalcore these days, like I don't know, it's just picking a band out.
Fit for a King, maybe something
or
like that.
Era or whatever. Doesn't sound like All That Remains or As I Lay Dying, which when we were coming up, I would associate as metalcore. All the bands are doing like the and then a singy chorus kind of stuff. So. Yeah, I don't know. It's such a vast like genre. Like, you know, Converge technically mix hardcore and metal. You could call them metalcore, but they don't sound anything like any other of those bands. So it kind of just is. I don't mind.
See, I think like in terms of like, you're just a metal band.
Yeah, that's exactly what we want to be. Like, and I'm always wary of saying that because people just a metal band or like makes it sound like boring or middle of the road when it's like just metal, but. Yeah, for me, it's all about trying to fill that, like, the middle lane where, to me, there's a big gap in the metal world. Like, if you think about bands like Pantera, Lamb of God, Machine Head, obviously those bands are still around. But in terms of newer bands, fit, like, coming up in
Do you know
lane.
the band that's been coming to my mind as we've just been talking through that, and when people say, oh, you know, they're just a great metal band? Gojira.
Yeah, true. They definitely have, like, a very distinctive sound of their own. And, like... But yeah, I would agree. Yeah.
So we'll get into track 3 now with Pariahs, and I am loving the solos on this. I have to say, it's quite impressive. Who has been inspiring you as a player, as you know, other guitar players? Who's been inspiring you recently? Like who you've been watching on YouTube at 3 a.m?
Honestly, not to sound just no one.
Right.
I can't say I've really been like paying as much attention to guitarists and stuff. I'm definitely like really focused on this record on my vocals. Having said that, it doesn't mean that I haven't really pushed myself as a guitarist. Like I feel like the solo in Deadwood is like the hardest thing I've ever written. And I think all the solos, I don't think anyone's going to be like, oh, you've just ignored them or dumbed them down or not given them attention.
Yeah.
But in terms of like actively listening to guitar, like solos and stuff, I can't think of many people like that come to mind.
Do you have like your sort of set favorites? Because I think every guitarist will pick up their core influences at a certain age. So, you know, we're talking like a Steve Vai or a Joe Satriani or Devin even. Like, you know,
I personally never got into any of those types of guitarists that did like solo music or even stuff like virtuoso prog stuff. I was always into Pantera, Dimebag, Trey from Morbid Angel, the guys in Cannibal Corpse. And later on, I got into like stuff like Pink Floyd and David Gilmour and stuff like that, I guess. But or like the guys in Opeth are super tasteful. But for the most part, I think there's a lot more like sort of, I'm trying to get a bit more vibe in the solos, a bit more like rough around the edges, kind of like Dimebaggy stuff that I never used to do. Not necessarily like pentatonic stuff, but like just make the guitar wail a bit more and just put more weird noises in there. Just make it sound like more vocal, I guess, and just to go with the attitude of the song.
It's funny you mentioned about that gap to fill there, and we've had so many years without Dime now. And so I think you're right. There's definitely that gap there, not say like, oh, just copy Dime, but that certainly, you know, those influences can creep in and be a beautiful thing.
Oh yeah, I've been using a wah pedal.
Oh, fantastic. Let's do this now. This is Sylosis and Pariahs. Primordial Radio, you are listening to the album playback of the brand new album from Sylosis, A Sign of Things to Come, out now via Nuclear Blast Records. Here with Josh Middleton from the band. That's track 4 from the new album, Poison for the Lost. And Josh, I hope that that you take this as intended. It's certainly meant as a compliment. But for me, I was listening to this and I was like, oh, it feels like there's a slight tinge of Conclusion of an Age on this.
Cool.
And I was wondering, like, do you ever go back to some of your old material, or is it like it's there, you leave it, and you don't really touch it much?
I think that's a fair observation to make. I think there's some definite elements of that. That wasn't a deliberate thing when writing that song, but I don't mind it at all because I think we're always going to I always want to keep one foot in what we do and just kind of. Just the other foot's free to just move around and try different things. But like at the end of the day, like I love metal, all the stuff I grew up on. I think for this record, there's a lot more stuff that was a huge part of like all of us growing up in our musical DNA that wasn't like allowed to be in Sylosis before because we didn't want people to think it was like
not true metal.
Exactly. Especially the time that I grew up getting into metal. The elitism, because I wasn't getting into death metal and extreme stuff, the elitism was way more intense than it is these days. And I think metal is a bit more accepting and the elitism's not there. But it was definitely something that was I was conscious of. So if we did anything that was too kind of groovy or Pantera-ish, people would be like, oh, that's metalcore. Or if you sing like Phil Anselmo, that would be like metalcore. Or even like a huge record for me and a lot of the guys was like Iowa by Slipknot. And I was like, I was obsessed with Slipknot, and we never really like had any of that like intensity come through. And I really loved the sort of just way that band made me feel as a kid, like when I was like 13. Just so
sheer rage, sheer angst. I'll still to this day never forget the day that I switched on Kerrang TV or Scores, whatever it was back in the day, on Wait and Bleed, and just that, and because that music video where they're there in it's like a live
Ozfest,
music video, isn't it? Yeah, Ozfest, that's the one, yeah. And from that moment, I was like, I'm hooked. Like, I'm in.
Yeah,
like, it's so good.
So yeah, it was just about like just being true to ourselves and just bringing out all the stuff that we were, listening to as kids. So. And every now and then I will revisit Conclusion or the old albums and just give them a listen and be like, yeah, I'm always just like, cool. Yeah, I like this. I don't have any issue with anything in our back catalogue. Like, it is what it is, and was, where we were at the time. I do things differently here and there on a lot of our records, but most bands would.
Yes, yeah. And that's, well, to be honest, that's what makes records as special as they are sometimes. If all bands had the chance to go back and redo things with their records, they wouldn't be what they are. So I think it's sort of good that it pans out like that. You've mentioned, like, I've noticed, a few times you've really mentioned the band. And I was thinking that since Sylosis started, you have gone through quite a few lineup changes, but more recently, that's really actually stabilized. So has it been tricky and now nice to sort of get that chemistry sort of like locked in and really working?
Yeah, it's been great. I mean, it's always tricky. Just in terms of like part of the lineup changes in the past would just be, when we're a smaller band and you're like going out on tour and coming home with less money than you left, as opposed to earning money. Some people are just like, I can't keep doing this, and like I'd always try and do things on the side of Sylosis that meant I could support myself. And when we go on tour, like, it's what it is.
It's like a holiday.
Yeah, exactly. So like now at least like we're, the band's bigger and that's not as big a concern. But it feels good. Like we've been friends, like, and the lineup's been stable for a while now. So yeah, and it's just nice and easy.
You've also got Ali from Bleed From Within from in the band as well. That must be pretty cool because, like, again, another band that's killing it in the metal scene.
Yeah,
so it must bring so much to the table.
Yeah, definitely. Like we feel a real kinship with those guys. I went to see them with Trivium a few nights ago or a week ago.
Oh, what a tour with Orbit Culture!
Yeah,
as well.
Yeah. Those
incredible.
guys are great. And actually, I can include them in this, even though I was just going to list British bands, but I was just going to say like the bands that we're talking about filling that like metal slot. It's like Sylosis, Bleed From Within, Malevolence, like all British bands, which is really cool. And yeah, Orbit Culture is sick too.
Yes, yes.
So yeah, the scene feels really good in the UK, and you've got obviously bands like Urn, Harriet. Yeah, it's a great time for UK metal.
Absolutely, yeah. There's a lot going on. So we are going to get into now Descent, and actually, it's quite funny. On my notes here, I noted the fact this was the title of Orbit Culture's album, and I'm sure it's just a coincidence.
I had no idea.
Yeah, I'm sure it's just a coincidence. But I do remember. I think you played with them last year as part of like a Knotfest show.
In Birmingham.
How was that? How did that go?
Cool, yeah. I mean, I didn't get to spend too much time with them. It was one of those.
In and out.
A lot of, well, I was going to say, it was one of those days.
It was hot as well. It was just before Bloodstock.
Yeah, the heat was insane. So, like,
there
was no just like hanging out. I was like lying down, trying not to move, trying not to exert any energy that would cause more sweat. But yeah, briefly met them at that show. They're really, really nice guys. And obviously the Bleed guys vouched for that, having done like an actual tour with them. Just like, oh yeah, definitely tour with them. So hopefully we could do something with them in the future too.
It'd be so like doing the shows with Bleed. Fair play to Ali because like doing two shifts like back to back.
Yeah, we'll see. Yeah, I'll definitely be up for that.
Yeah, I can see that being a bit of a struggle. Let's get to this now. This is Sylosis and Descent. Primordial Radio, that is track 6 from the brand new Sylosis album, A Sign of Things to Come. Absent. I'm here with Josh Middleton from the band, dude. So good to have you here. Is that the slowest / melodic track that you've ever done as Sylosis? I was trying to think, and it's definitely been plenty of melodic moments over the course of Sylosis, but I was like, is there a deep cut that I'm missing? I feel like that's maybe the slowest.
There's a few deep cuts. There was like, we did a hidden track on Monolith that was just acoustic and piano.
Oh, did that go on for like 15 minutes or something?
See, I thought
I remember this now. Yeah.
I thought you would have been like, oh yeah, it's a hidden track. Because like when I was a kid, like all those new metal records would have like it was just a hidden track, and you'd like just skip your CD forward and just play. There's a song there. I remember like there's a track at the end of like Around the Fur by Deftones.
That's it. Yes. Yeah.
But doing that like for a slightly younger generation, people are like, why did you put? Why is there 15 minutes of silence in this song? I was like, it's not the same song. It's
in the Spotify generation.
Yeah. So yeah, there was one there. We did one on Dormant Heart, the last track on that was acoustic, and then Abandon on the last record was like somewhere like a little bit more, like a little bit more band in that one. But yeah, this is, we've never had the confidence to put a song like that in the middle of the record before. And this one's definitely a slightly different vibe. It's not like acoustic. It's more like a dark, moody, kind of Nine Inch Nails inspired, kind of industrial-ish song. But yeah, it's one that I'm glad we put it in the middle of the record. We also wanted to make the record that was like just 10 tracks and 5 songs aside, just one single vinyl disc. And it's a cool way to kind of close side A if you're a record buyer. And it feels good to see that song's like a huge talking point. And I keep getting the most comments about that one, just being like, oh, Absint's the best song on the record. And it's one of those songs when you're a metal band, like talking about how heavy your new album is, and you put a song out like that, you're like, oh, people are going to try and crucify us for this. But yeah, the response to that one's been insane.
Nice to see the risk being rewarded, ultimately.
I think people can kind of tell that it's not like, we're not trying, it's definitely not trying to be like a radio song or anything like that, or like a poppy single. It's just like, it's melodic and it's dark, but it's still very Sylosis. I think a lot of people kind of pick up on the vibe of the song, and it will remind them of some stuff we did in the past, like on Edge of the Earth. And I think that's just the way that I write melodic stuff, maybe.
Yeah. And I think, a big part of this album is that it has been the first one since you left Architects. And I was just wondering, like, how difficult was it for you to make that decision? And did your time in Architects ultimately influence things, what you do now, maybe giving you the confidence to take some risks maybe that you might not have done in previous records?
I think if anyone hears any similarities, particularly in like guitar riffs, because I think some people have thought there might be like an Architects influence, but I'm just quick to remind people that I was writing a lot of that Architects stuff. So I just where I'm at as a writer, like riff wise, or like I was introducing some sort of like Nine Inch Nails and Typo Negative stuff into Architects, which I've also introduced into Sylosis stuff. But that's just because I like it. It's not come from anyone else but me. But there is definitely some stuff that I've taken from Architects. The main thing is like being able to like work and collaborate better, because when I first joined and was writing for Holy Hell, like the first few songs I gave them, which was like Modern Misery and Mortal After All, I remember sending down the demos and him like chopping and changing stuff, make that the verse riff and move that there and completely like rearrange the song. And he was like, just so you know, like I've made some big changes. And I was like, oh God, this is like, as an artist,
my OCD can't handle this.
Yeah, exactly. As an artist or someone who like, I had a vision for how I wanted the songs to be. It's really hard to like,
baby.
Yeah, exactly. It's really hard to like break out of that and get used to that way of working. And, over the years, I've got to the point now where I actually actively seek out input. We worked with Scott Adkins properly as a producer on this record. We worked with him before, but this time I was like, no, have the song 6 months in advance. Tell us which bits you think sucked. Like, let's work on the arrangements. We got loads of feedback from our manager and the label and the band as a whole, like really just trying to collaborate more. So that's something that my time in Architects really helped me just like break down my just clinging so tightly onto the way I see things and not collaborating as well. So yeah. And so what was it like then to be able to have 100% of your time to focus on Sylosis versus juggling the two bands? Well, I mean, obviously the record was written mostly 2020-21, so it was as you were still in Architects ultimately. Yeah, and recorded in 2022. It was quite a drawn out process and didn't finish like the mix, I think, until like maybe November 2022. Get it mastered, and then we put Deadwood out just because we had that Wembley show with Lamb of God and Creator. So that one sort of just skipped ahead of it being like an album release song, but obviously it's on the album. But yeah. Let's get to the next track now. So this is track 7. And then like in track 8 as well, it feels like there's a bit of a theme here. So you got Eye for an Eye and Judas. And so like, let's talk about sort of lyrical themes then of the album. So, are we sort of centering around some like religious things going on with like a couple of tracks like that? I definitely, even if I'm not talking about anything to do with religion, sometimes like just old worldy religious imagery, like lyrically. I guess I use words like that, but obviously I'm not religious. But lyrically, I mean, the title track, which wasn't intended to be the title track, so it wasn't necessarily meant to sum up what the album's about. But that song was just sort of about, obviously written, mid-pandemic, and just the anxiety around just like the state of the world, politically, socially, and the environment, all that kind of stuff, and just that kind of like what's going on and what does the future hold. So that's what that song's about. And there's other songs like, I guess, like Elements of Deadwood, which is about people hell-bent on chasing profits over what's best for people or the planet. And yeah, in Eye for an Eye, that's kind of about more like, I guess, religious hypocrisy, like especially seeing a lot of people like, particularly you see a lot of these like right-wing groups in America who are like talking about like good Christian values, but saying horrendous things at the same time that doesn't like add up, doesn't like sit with what they're sort of preaching. But yeah, so there's no real necessarily theme across the record. I've always been quite, I've always used sort of like metaphors in the past and try and like sort of hide what I was talking about lyrically. And this time I just wanted to be a bit more direct and try and just connect with people a bit more and not just be.
It's kind of like your sort of view of how parts of the world are right now.
I guess so, yeah, to a degree. And then there's also like some more introspective stuff like Absent.
Yeah. Let's get to this now. This is Sylosis and Eye for an Eye. Primordial Radio, that is track 8, Judas, from the new album from Sylosis, A Sign of Things to Come. It's out now via Nuclear Blast Records. I'm here with Josh Middleton from the band. And Josh, you mentioned vinyl a few times. So how many different variants have we got going for the album, man? And I know that when it comes to making an impact in things like charts and all of that, the best way is buy the album, folks. Buy the album, and but definitely buy a vinyl as well. So have you got a few like variants and stuff?
I think we've got at least 5. I can think of, yeah.
And do you take quite a hands-on process when it comes to like the gatefolds and like all of that sort of thing, or do you kind of like leave Nuclear Blast to it?
No, between us, to be honest, our management were pretty. Our manager was pretty hands-on with that, and had a lot of ideas, as well as like the aesthetic, where we printed on like a matte card, but the snake is and the logo is embossed in like a gloss, so it's very like striking when you take it out of the shrink wrap, like, and then you move the snake around. It looks really cool. And we had a good friend of the band who goes by the name Snakehead, which has nothing to do with the fact that we had a snake on the cover. That's just like his nickname. Who kind of helped piece together all the artwork, had tons of ideas for how everything was going to be presented, even like all our new merch, the new logo. He really sort of took charge, and it was great to just be able to like have a more of a hands-off approach personally, because I'm very like artistically minded. I used to do artwork for bands and stuff, and I can't juggle everything, and being able to leave that stuff in the hands of someone else who's very capable and has a really good vision was excellent this time. Yeah,
I didn't actually know you did artwork for other bands. Whose artwork did you do?
Just smaller bands, I guess. I haven't done it in quite a while, and I painted the artwork for the last Sylosis record. I did that on my tablet, like on various flights.
Wow.
Yeah.
The way that things can get done in 2023. Crazy. We talked over the course of this conversation, we've talked about, I feel like you've talked quite a bit about your influences and a want to sort of fill maybe a void there is in the metal scene at the moment. I was wondering, and you talked about collaboration too. I was wondering, would you like to collaborate with some different artists? Because we see this a lot now in the metal scene, where you guest vocalists and things like that. Obviously, there isn't on this album, but are there people you're thinking, oh, maybe that could be cool? We'll get Joe Duplantier on the next record, or whatever it might be.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, I'm a big fan of his. He's been a big influence on me since I started doing vocals, actually, because when we started doing Edge of the Earth, I could only really project my voice with a pitch, and he was like one of the first people to really like make like pitched screaming like a thing. But to be honest with you, there's all sorts of like amazing, childhood heroes that would be great if we could get them on a song. But I think it'd be cool to do more with, our peers and like just, bands we're friends with, like the guys in Believe From Within or Malevolence, Harriet, or like Fit for an Autopsy or something like that. That'd be cool.
Yeah, that'd be great. Well, I know you got the tour coming up with Malev, but I'm imagining like a collab song.
Yeah, I'd love to.
Yeah, that would be
see if
amazing.
we can make it happen on tour.
Absolutely, yeah, do it on the tour. So we get to track 9, Thorns. Now, for me, I know that album title tracks tend to be the representative track of the album, but in many ways, I kind of felt that this track represented the album in a lot of ways, because it sort of showed all the different things that are sort of going on with Sylosis, all the different ways in which you're pushing yourself, because you mentioned you push yourself quite a lot. Would that be a fair thing to say?
For me, like, it's a bit more of a straightforward one. So it does, I guess, like back in the day, I'd always want to make sure we've got like some fast thrash beats in a song. So like, people discovering us for the first time are like, oh, they're a thrash band. And this song, I guess Thorns doesn't have much of the technical and fast aggressive stuff. It's definitely a bit more of a moody one. So for me, like, I wouldn't say it is, but I know what you mean. Like it definitely has like, the darker elements, the melodic stuff, the heavy stuff as well. Just quite proud of that one. I wasn't sure again how that one would go down with the metal fans, if they'd think it was, I don't know. So I think we've touched upon songs like this in the past with stuff like Leech. So it hopefully doesn't feel too different for us. I mean, to me, like, I'll say it now, it's very Typo Negative inspired. Whereas Thorns was just the working title when I started writing the song, because Typo Negative used like Thorns on the cover of, is it October Rust? I can't remember. I was just thinking, right, Typo Negative song. And but then the lyrics just came out, and then it all just pieced together like as if I didn't write it. So that was part of the inspiration for that one.
Nice. Always nice to know when there's a Typo Negative inspiration going on with music. Let's do this now. Track 9, Thorns. Primordial Radio, track 9 from the new Sylosis album, A Sign of Things to Come. Very influenced there by Typo Negative, which is always a beautiful and wonderful thing. That is Thorns. Josh, thank you so much for your time today, man. It has been a pleasure to catch up, and I know you got plenty still to come. So the album is out now via Nuclear Blast. Make sure you go out and grab a copy and get one of those vinyl variants. But you got an amazing tour in the UK coming up with Malevolence, a band that you've sort of referenced a few times over the chat today. How much are you looking forward to that? Yeah,
a lot. This will be our first tour since 2016.
Whoa.
We've played some shows here and there, but this will be the first time we're like... It's really hard to just go in and out and just play like one show and then you're done for however many months, which is what we've done recently.
Economically, so it's just no sense made anymore.
I'm really looking forward to the tour. I really like the guys in Malev. Like I've got to know them quite a bit over the last few years. We're under the same manager. It's going to be a fun one.
Amazing.
And obviously Guilt Trip and Justice for the Damned.
That's
it's a strong package. Thank you very much for having me on. I appreciate being back.
No worries, Matt. No worries. It's always a pleasure to speak. So we're going to wrap up now on a Godless Throne. And I was listening to this, and I think the only way I could sort of really kind of describe it, I was like, it's like a ballad with blast beats.
Ali described it the other night. He said it was the most, right, this is his words. He said it was the perfect Sylosis song. It was like, in terms of like what Sylosis is known for and the sound that like people associate with us, it feels very, very like reminiscent of like Conclusion of an Age and Edge of the Earth. But just like a bit more focused. So I'd say it's quite like one of our most like Sylosis-y sounding songs on the record. But yeah, I guess you could call it a ballad with blast beats as well, because we've always had like very like melancholic, melodic stuff, and I love heavy riffs.
Absolutely, and so do we. Josh Middleton, Sylosis, dude. thank you again so much for your time. Look forward to the tour that's coming up later this year with Malevolence. This is Sylosis and a Godless Throne.
Primordial Radio.